I love the idea of your character using tragedy to have triumph, in the sense of this concept of like taking his pain and actually building these incredible art.
Yeah.
As an actor, do you feel the same way in the sense of with the characters you play? Are you able to like get through certain painful elements of life or negative aspects of life through acting? Do you find that you're putting that out into the world and creating art out of it?
Well, you're assuming that I have painful elements of my life,
Right.
and in my
you don't.
I'm knocking wood. Yeah, I mean, I think definitely it's in response to certain things. You know what? Case in point, my mom died a couple of years ago, and you know, I was sad, and so I think those are the types of films that I was just sort of drawn to. I didn't really feel like doing something super lighthearted. That was not like I was crying every day, but I think that sort of settled inside of me, and maybe as a sort of self-therapy, it's like, boy, well, I'm just gonna let that out through whatever happens in, you know, in this next film I do.
Well, I remember watching you host SNL, and there was that great moment. I believe it was I think Ed Helms stood up and said, "You don't need to do these sad movies anymore because, well, you can make money if you come back for an office reunion."
Right.
But I mean, you do them because they are films that you're passionate about.
Sure.
In the sense of like, do you want to get away from comedy? Are you like, in the sense of do you want to show, because you're showing such a massive range with these performances, even in Vice and Here and Foxcatcher. Is that an active decision?
I think it's just based mostly on the script. Mostly it's based on the things that I get offered at the time. But like in this last year, I did a couple of things that were pretty dark and pretty subdued. I don't include Marwen on that necessarily because it's more of a fantasy. It's emotional, but there's also a lot of lightheartedness and fun to it. But yeah, I think sometimes it's a reflection of just where you are, like where your headspace is, and the kind of things that you feel inside might be, I don't know. I wouldn't even say therapeutic, but yeah, you just sort of go with whatever you're feeling internally.
I think it'd be cool to see Mark do the office reunion with the dolls. That's how it needs to be done.
You know what? Sometimes he sends me pictures of different scenarios that things that I've told him about in my life, and he will depict it in a doll scenario and take these beautiful photographs of it. And he sends me these things. That's a great idea. I would love to see The Office depicted in his world.
Have him do it, man.
He would do it.
Let's call him right now. I'm a huge fan of Zemeckis and the performance capture he's been doing, obviously, since Polar Express to now. I'm curious for you on set, when you were doing the sequences where you're playing the doll version Hoagie, and I'm wondering how that looked for you, and what was the craziest thing you had to do to make it look like he was either driving or moving a certain way? How did that appear on set?
You know, the way, I'd never done it before, and the way, I don't even know what to call him, Bob Zemeckis, Mr. Zemeckis, like Bob. He said, think of it as a really low-rent black box theater sort of performance. There are no props, there's no set. You're just in this space and you're acting. And it's all based on imagination. So that's really the way we approach it. At least it's the way I approach it. You know, you don't have, you know, a pistol and a holster. There's like a block of wood velcroed to the side of your like gray onesie, and you sort of mime it. There was a lot of miming. There was, you know, just a lot of trying to imagine what was around you and what your environment was, and it was kind of fun. It took a little getting used to, but it was fun to do.
It was awesome. Now, one of the things that I love about this movie, obviously, are the Back to the Future callbacks. And I was geeking out a little bit, because I mean, I can imagine like you're working with Bob Zemeckis, and he's obviously a genius. But I'm curious, what is your favorite Back to the Future movie out of the trilogy? I'm a 2 guy. Where are you at on that?
I like the first one. I always, right out of the blocks, I mean, and 2 is great, and I think 3 is really fun too, but yeah, I'd have to go with 1.
So I'm a big fan of performance capture. I always go back to Polar Express and kind of like just the innovative technology you're using there. Looking at the performance capture now in this film, obviously technology has advanced. Can you talk about the difference in working with it at that point and now, and how as a director it's changed for you to be able to get the performance and the emotional aspect?
Right. Well, the simple and short answer is that the performance capture technology has advanced 15 years. And in the digital world, that's a lot of advancement, you know, because digital horsepower doubles or triples every year. So we have many more tools. But we also have these very powerful digital cameras too now that we can capture the the movement of the human face in a way where you don't even need markers. They can just read the pores in the actor's skin and the creases in their skin and just completely capture all that information. So the technology has advanced light years since I did it for the first time in Polar Express.
Now, Alan Silvestri is one of my favorite artists of all time, and I've been following his work obviously because of your films throughout the years. And the way you direct him and then have his scores in your films as leading characters, obviously with Back to the Future, it was very similar, and here. Can you talk about how that relationship has changed in the sense of like you guys working together? Do you have a shorthand now because of all the films you've made together?
Well, absolutely. We have a shorthand because we've been working together for so many years, but I never talked to Alan about anything musical. I never talked to him about notes or orchestration or anything. I always talked to Alan like I would talk to an actor, and I just talked to him about what I think we should be feeling in a scene or in a moment, and talk to him that way. And he then goes off and figures out how to translate that into music. So that's basically our shorthand. Speaking of Silvestri, one of my favorite movies this year was Ready Player One. And there's that great moment where they have the Zemeckis cube. And I was just curious, does Spielberg come to you and say, we're doing this in the movie, or do you find out when you see it? No, I knew that. Well, I knew that it was in the movie, and yes, he told me very early on. But it was also part of the book, I think. Yeah, it was always in the book. So he said, we're going to keep that part of the book, and I said, okay, well, that'll be fun. And what did you think of it in the film when you saw it? It was fun. It was great. It was. I guess it's a shorthand for time travel or stopping time, whatever they were doing with it, without going into too many details, you do reference Back to the Future in this movie, which I thought was really, really cool. And kind of going back and forth in regards to how filmmaking has changed. When you were filming Back to the Future and you had those tracks of fire from the tires, you kind of do that here digitally now. I'm wondering what it was like to do it back then and then how you did it now. Like, obviously one's digital, one's practical, but how did you do it at that point? Well, the practical one was we basically when we did the first Back to the Future, we basically dug a little trench in the asphalt of the road and poured gasoline in it and lit it on fire. When we did it in this movie, it was just painted in by digital artists. Yeah, that's so crazy to think about how things have changed. Right. One thing I love about this story is this idea of taking a tragedy and turning it into triumph. And to me, that's the most beautiful thing. We can take our pain and we can put it into art and make people kind of relate to it. Without getting into any specifics about pain in your life, I'm wondering, as a filmmaker, when you direct a movie, how much of it is you expressing things you've gone through in your life? I mean, obviously, you're telling stories. We're seeing stories that are written and things like that. But how much of your pain and is coming through as a triumph and through your filmmaking? Well, I think all filmmakers, all artists, put themselves into their work, but I think they do mostly subconsciously, and I think I do too. I don't ever have a specific agenda of what I'm trying to, present emotionally, but obviously I'm connected to certain material because of what it is that I'm feeling or what it is that I'm working out at this point in my life or something like that. And I was attracted to this story because I love the idea of the healing power of art. And I was able to identify with that. And I think that's a universal theme. And I think everyone has an artistic outlet in their life. And I think we use that to try to make sense of these very complicated emotions that we feel. And that, I think, is the whole purpose of art. And I think people can identify with that. And last quick thing for you, I'm looking at Janelle Monáe's character, and I see you talk about her leg and what happened with that. I was curious, kind of going back to what you did with Sinise and Forrest Gump, in the sense of like that technology has shifted. Is that kind of a nod to what that was going on with Sinise and how that technology's changed now into this? Oh yeah, well yeah. I mean, when we did Forrest Gump, that was one of the first times that we were able to use a computer to erase his legs. That's just off-the-shelf stuff now. Anyone can do that with a computer now. So it was not that difficult to do in this film. Wow. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. I appreciate everything you've done as an artist. I really do. Thank you for telling the story. Thank you. I think it just